Hey, welcome back. So, today's video, I finally finished the first season, or only season. I finally finished watching Netflix's Cowboy Bebop, and yeah, I suppose I've got to talk about it, don't I? It is certainly a show that exists. I suppose I'll start off by talking about the positives. Uh, John Cho. I loved John Cho as Spike. Like, I really do think that he was an older version of Spike than compared to the anime. And I know a lot of people were unhappy that they had like an older Spike, but he really brought Spike's charm and depth. So I really liked John Cho as Spike and Mustafa Shakir as Jet. I thought he did a really good job in the role. Um, and while I disliked this take on Faye Valentine, I did appreciate Danielle Pineda's performance for the most part. And there were a few other good performances as well. There, some of the special effects were pretty cool. There was some definitely some stylish visuals. Some of the fight scenes were really good. Um, you know, there was definitely some stuff about it that was pretty fun. But, oh well, it part of the problem it faces is the fact that Cowboy Bebop is one of the best animes out there. Like, it's just an incredible series. Uh, One that absolutely stands up. One that is just brilliant and stylish and just everything you could ever want in a TV show. The original Cowboy Bebop is amazing, brilliant, not perfect, but gets pretty damn close. So adapting that was always going to be an uphill battle because it's like it was always going to have to face comparisons to the show, to the anime, and it was never going to come out on the positive side of those comparisons. So that was an obstacle. But even setting that aside, it's not a great show. Uh, even setting aside, even setting aside the inability to hold up to the anime, it's not a great show. Vicious. Holy shit. Wow. Just how do you screw up that badly? Everything about Vicious, every single thing about Vicious in this show was just the worst. He looked terrible. The acting was just, the performance was terrible. Just hammy and cheesy and damn near comedic. His entire long-running subplot, garbage. Like, the original anime, Vicious rarely showed up. He was, we were like several episodes in before we even first hear about Vicious. Like, I forget what episode he debuted in, but, it was pretty, like, it was surprisingly deep into the series before Vicious actually appeared in the anime. Here he's there from the start, and at no point is he ever actually compelling. He's garbage. He's terrible. He's just the worst part of the entire show. Yeah, fifth season. It takes in the anime, Vicious doesn't show up until the fifth episode, and even then, he appears only a handful of times after that. Um, he's a threat, but he's almost um, I saw him compared to the shark from Jaws. He's a threat, but we only see him occasionally. For the most part, he's just sort of in the background. We see the fin as Jen Bartel. Jen Bartel compared him to the shark from Jaws, where we see the fin. So he's there, but he kept hidden most of the time, and it makes so that whenever we do see him, it highlights his menace. Here, because he's there throughout, and because he just comes across as this utterly, I don't know, he's just whiny and petulant and useless and overacting with his like just overacting to the point of it being where it fits a comedy better. This Vicious would work better in a comedy series, not a drama like the Cowboy Bebop's supposed to be. Hell, even in a comedy, he wouldn't even be he'd be too over the top to be funny. And again, in the anime, there is a subplot in the anime where Vicious takes over the syndicate. He does it by showing up and just fucking slaughtering people. Like, that's what he does. He shows up and he kills a bunch of people. There's no long-term maneuvering going on. He just shows up and kills a bunch of people, and that's that. This one, they made Vicious, they gave Vicious that overarching subplot where he's gathering allies and scheming and things like that, and Vicious is not interesting enough. He's not well written enough, and he's not well performed enough for that to hold up. And then there's Julia. One thing that the creators wanted to do with this show was to, give the women more agency and shit like that. Like, the thing is, Julia doesn't really have much agency in the show. She spends the whole series, looking nervous and scared. Like she's on the verge of crying the whole time. Only for on the very end of the last episode for it to be revealed, nope, she's an evil bitch who takes over the syndicate. And yes, that's a spoiler. I don't give a shit. You don't need to watch this show. It's not good. It's not worth watching. So, yeah, I'm actually fine. For once, I actually have no problem spoiling shit. Because this show is not good enough to not be spoiled. So the very last episode, Julia decides to... They turn Julia into a completely different character so she can take over the syndicate. And it doesn't feel earned. Like, it doesn't feel authentic. Partly because at no point in the whole show have we seen who the hell Julia is. All we've seen of her throughout the entire show is that she's scared shitless. Is that she's scared and ready to cry. She looks like a Baikal seal. You know? So her just suddenly becoming this cold, ruthless crime boss, it comes out of absolutely nowhere. And it does not feel authentic. It feels like a twist thrown in for the sake of having a twist. Um, and then there's Faye. Again, I thought Danielle Pineda mostly did a good job with the role as it was written. So the problem is the role as it was written. In the anime, again, Faye is a femme fatale with serious trust issues who spends like the first half of the show just continually trying to continually screw over Spike and Jet. She ends up on the Bebop out of necessity. And she never, at any point, does she ever actually seem... Does she ever actually express any affection for them? Like, she spends the whole series acting as though she hates them. And they spend the whole series not particularly liking her either. Which is what makes it so powerful that when she does show loyalty to them, or when she does demonstrate that she cares. This one, they just like they took a lot of the con artist out of her. They made her more sincere. Is the issue? Anime Faye is not sincere. This one is, and I don't like that change. And like, there's that episode where she hooks up with that mechanic, May. And, you know, bisexual representation, great, all for that. But all I could think about was that in the anime, Faye would probably really only do that if she saw some advantage in it. Like, if she could get some advantage out of it. You know, a lead on a bounty, or a lead on some fast cash, something like that. But here, again, they've made her sincere, and it's... By the way, I mentioned Jen Bartel earlier when she about the shark. She actually had a really good thread on Twitter about Cowboy Bebop, pointing out some of the flaws. So, some of these thoughts are going to come directly from her, from Jen Bartel's thread. But one thing she pointed out was that the show removed its political commentary. Or I should say sociopolitical and socioeconomic commentary. For example, in the anime, Jet leaves the police because he realizes that the police force is corrupt. Here it's just his partner. That's the corrupt cop. His partner, that's it. The rest of the police force, it's fine. We barely see the police, but when they do show up, they seem to be mostly pretty decent. In the anime, the cops are corrupt. Bounty hunters have higher moral standards than the police in the anime. That was a key point. But that got wiped away here. At a time when police corruption and abuse is a huge thing in the US. It's a huge topic in the US, and Netflix just went, no, we're not stepping into that conversation. Because Netflix are cowards. It's really what it comes down to. They're too scared to actually have actually brought over the anime message that police are corrupt. Faye in the anime, she was ripped off by a con man when she woke up from cryo sleep, but she was also ripped off by the doctors in the hospital. They added some huge, massive charges to her medical bill, hospital bill. And hey, guess what? Something that the U.S. healthcare system deals with. That's right, hospitals attaching ridiculously high charges to bills. Yeah, that's a thing that happens in the U.S. Um, but Netflix doesn't want to talk about that apparently because they removed that element entirely. So yeah, Faye goes because yeah, in the anime Faye was looking for her past, but even more than that, she was actually looking for just a ton of money to pay off her medical debt. That was a big thing for her. It wasn't just about tracking down one person who wronged her, or it wasn't just tracking down leads on her past. It was she needed money to pay off her medical debt. But here, medical debt is just never brought up because that would be getting too real, I suppose. Uh, Speaking of which, the episode of with Faye and her fake mother, again, it didn't work for me. Um, and yeah, as Vartel put it, Faye went from being a femme fatale who was loyal to her friends and a lot of and very deep and all that to just being, as Jen put it, a capital G girl boss. And yeah, it's they did remove a whole lot of what made the character interesting. Uh, and it ties into the removal of class struggle that the show featured. Like the anime had a lot of focus on poor and working class people and the way the system screws them over and keeps them down and the way they have to struggle to survive. The show just nope, throw that right out the window. None of that garbage. No, this show's all about stylish people. All about people who have money. Aside from the crew of the Bebop, everyone else has money. And hell, we only occasionally actually see the struggles of the Bebop crew in terms of or the financial struggles occasionally. But other than that, the rest of the cast, it's a lot of people who are doing well. Anna owns a bar. Vicious is high ranking in the syndicate, and we don't even really see much in the way um, of other characters who were in the anime, who were lower class. Like the anime had an entire episode about truckers. Um, and yeah, none of that here. Of course, if it had included the episode about truckers, it would have tried to find some way to tie it into the uh, larger storyline, which one of the appeals of the anime is that, for the most part, the episodes were self contained. There were certain episodes that were part of, the larger ongoing plot, but there were only a few. This one, every episode had to be part of the plot somehow, had to further larger storylines somehow, um, which didn't really work for me. Um, yeah, it's just everything. 90% of what made the anime so great, so memorable, so lovable, so enjoyable, just got watered down or removed entirely. And I mean, clearly, I am a fan of the show. You know, I loved the anime, and they just did, and Netflix, the Netflix people who adapted it, Christopher Yost and the rest of the uh, people who developed it, didn't get it. They they were trying to adapt it for a U.S. audience in a way that stripped it of all meaning. And they did. Like, they were trying to, and they tried to have it both ways. You know, stay true to the show while also doing a completely different show. They tried to go both ways, and it wasn't satisfying in either direction. They had, in some cases, they tried to do, shot for shot adaptations of certain scenes from the anime. Um, so they were really trying to evoke the original, but they also wanted to make it its own show to tell their own story. But grabbing specific by grabbing so much from the anime, it meant that their own story suffered. And by trying to tell their own story so much, it meant that what they grabbed from the anime suffered. So it just didn't work in that sense. And like I said, everything to do with Vicious and Julia, garbage. Every single aspect of that of those characters sucked, awful, terrible. And it meant that each episode, half of each episode, or at least a quarter of every episode, was completely unwatchable because it was focused on characters who were just absolute shit. So, yeah, it's just the show just does not work. Um, and then it was shitty enough that it ended up getting canceled. Um, after its 10th episode. So yeah, so now the rest of the plot that they had planned is never going to be seen, which, judging by the first 10 episodes, not a huge loss. We're not losing anything by not having a second season of Cowboy Bebop. Uh, the one good thing about Netflix's live action Cowboy Bebop is that it's you know good motivation to go rewatch the original anime, because that shit was brilliant. That shit had something to say, and it was way more stylish than the live action. Before I go, hey, compliment sandwich. One last positive thing to say about the live action Cowboy Bebop: Yoko Kanno, the composer of the anime. They brought him back. That's great. That was a great choice. Can't go wrong with Yoko Kanno. That guy, like, his music in the original anime was definitely a big part of what made it work. So bringing him back, great choice, great call. One of like three good choices that they made throughout the making of this one. All right. All that said, that is enough to say about this show. more than needs to be said about it. All that really needs to be said about it is it sucks. It's all channel or inner Jay Sherman. It stinks. It stinks. Yeah, that's it for now. So thanks for watching, and have a nice day.